Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cassandra McGee. I'm a Senior Program Manager with JFF, and welcome to today's Youth Apprenticeship Works Virtual Office Hour. We are so happy that you took time out of your busy schedule to join us for today's discussion. We'll be talking about CTE integration into registered apprenticeship programs. Today, our presenters are from the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation and Delaware Restaurant Association. This is in part funded by U.S. Department of Labor and as part of the Youth Apprenticeship Intermediaries Project. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Andrea Messing-Matthey, who is a director for our Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning at JFF. And as a reminder, this session is being recorded. Andrea?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this pretty informal conversation today about CTE integration and registered apprenticeship. For those of you who are new to the conversation, CTE is career and technical education, registered apprenticeship referring to that body of space where folks are integrating related technical instruction and on-the-job learning in a cohesive and combined way. I'm joined today in conversation, and again, as Cassandra mentioned, Andrea Messing-Matthey with the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning at JFF, and I'm joined today with Raylan Grogan from the Delaware Restaurant Association Education Foundation and Mindy Larson-Crystal from the National Restaurant Association Education Foundation. So today, as we're talking about CTE integration and registered youth apprenticeship, I want to hone in a little bit on why we're talking about this particular topic. By integrating classroom instruction and hands-on learning, both youth apprenticeship and career technical education can enhance a learner's educational experience. They can enhance the way that educational experience is processed and help better prepare young people for future career success. That's part of the broader scope of why we're all here. So rather than isolating CTE, career technical education, as a separate educational strategy, an integrated approach looks at combining education and training in one way so that we can ensure that all learners have an opportunity to succeed in a career of their choosing. This is really a way to bend the arc on how we prepare young people for career. Just as a little primer before we dive in, I want to make sure that we kind of understand the 5 core components of an apprenticeship, and that youth apprenticeship as a strategy incorporates all of these components. First of all, an apprenticeship is a job. So there's an employer involved as well as a selection process. Secondly, when someone brings on an apprentice, the assumption is that they don't possess all of the knowledge and skills that they will be required to be proficient in their job. So education is required. And in the apprenticeship world, we call that related instruction. Any new employee needs to be taught the technical aspects of doing the job and to be supported as they learn. This structured on-the-job component is essential to an apprentice's success. And in order to progress in their learning, an apprentice needs to receive feedback. A feedback loop is designed to let an apprentice and the employer know how the apprentice is progressing and what they need to do to continue their progress. Finally, the apprentice achieves competency in the work processes, completes the apprenticeship, and then earns a nationally recognized apprenticeship completion credential, in addition to any certification or licensing credential that might be part of that related instruction. So youth apprenticeship incorporates all of these, but does so in a way that stretches that related instruction and on-the-job learning into the high school space. So today we're talking about in-school youth. And we're talking about how we bend that arc again from high school into a registered apprenticeship using career and technical education as a strategy that binds these two things together. So as we think about CTE and how that integration occurs, there are 2 kind of core components, and they're instructional alignment and program alignment. And when we think about instructional alignment, we're thinking about how school districts and employers seek to connect secondary CTE students with high quality apprenticeship programs, and by taking intentional steps to sequence and align instructional content, often with input from employer or labor sponsors. When we're talking about program articulation, that's kind of how we think about that ease or seamlessness of a student's journey, their transition from secondary career technical education courses to apprenticeship. And it's driven by program goals and designs. And each program around the country has different ways to align these the program and different ways that the instruction gets aligned. So today we're talking about this work that's happening in the state of Delaware with a restaurant association. And I'm wondering if I can to my friends from Delaware to talk a little bit about how you've worked with local school districts to align the requirements of the registered apprenticeship with career and technical education courses. Raylan, I wonder if I can pass it to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for having us. To give you a little bit of background in how we tapped into this very special work, we were asked to partner on the U.S. Department of Labor Youth Apprenticeship Grant by both Delaware Department of Education and the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation because of our work with our Delaware ProStart program. The ProStart program is run underneath the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation. It's in all 50 states, Guam, Department of Defense bases in Europe and Asia. Here in Delaware, we're reaching 3,000 students in 21 high schools and at 2 correctional facilities, James T. Vaughn Correctional Center and Baylor Women's Correctional Institution. Within that programming, we work with 45 educators. We provide professional development to both the educators and the students. We run, statewide competitions. We host virtual learning series. We offer scholarships. We offer internships, externships, and workforce opportunities. Previously, historically, we've always pushed our ProStart students to either pursue post-secondary education, military, and or directly into the workforce. And when apprenticeship came and actually fell into our lap about 2.5 years ago from Department of Labor, it just made sense. It's the new wave of education. Why not earn while you learn? Stack up industry and nationally recognized credentials, all while receiving that United States Department of Labor Journey Person Certificate. 2.5 years ago, at that time, we weren't really tapped into the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation's Restaurant Manager Apprenticeship Program. We were really kind of focused in on the line cook shortage. So we developed our own line cook apprenticeship program. 9 months later, National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation came out with a 1-year line cook apprenticeship program. And it just made sense due to the size of our staff, to convene, to coordinate, to market, and work hand in hand with the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation to push their programs. It just made sense. So we are working again with both DOE and National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation to expand registered apprenticeship program for our students to pursue the 1-year line cook program or the 2-year restaurant manager program. And we were one of 4 states asked to pilot this under the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation. I'll let Mindy kind of discuss the in-depth details of the programming, but we have already facilitated 42 employer locations that are currently onboarded for our students to choose from up and down the state of Delaware. We have already secured 14 out of our 23 high school programs, including our correctional facilities, to partner with us on this expansion of the apprenticeship program. And what we're doing is working with those ProStart high school sites and not asking them to revamp their program. We're asking them to continue doing what they're doing within our ProStart program, following the foundations of restaurant management and culinary arts curriculum, pushing those industry and nationally recognized credentials. All we're asking extra of them is to record that into the database. I'll let Mindy speak about that, but to start tracking it, essentially acting as a dual enrollment opportunity. So if you're already offering those ServSafe credentials, just record it on the database so that if your students do decide to pursue one of these apprenticeship tracks, they can receive that advanced placement in with a registered employer, so that they are, closer to the finish line, pursuing that related training, instruction, on-the-job learning. So Mindy, if you kind of want to, discuss the programs, that's a little bit of background about the work we do, why, we're able to offer this opportunity to our programs. In addition, we have an advisory committee that help us with these grassroots efforts. We host monthly employer accelerator meetings to expand our employer list. And we're hosting a Welcome Restaurant Youth Registered Apprenticeship meeting this Wednesday to kind of welcome all of our programs and try to entice more programs to get involved if they see other programs getting involved. We're tapping into our local community-based organizations to kind of provide those resources to assist in barriers to make sure that success is not limited. And so it's a village. It really takes a village to make this happen. But we're really excited to be doing this work. And this would not be possible without our partnership with the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation. So Mindy, I will finally let you take it over.
Just took me a minute to find my unmute button. I'll just pause before I jump in. Andrew, do you have any follow-up questions to what Raylyn said so that we can have more of a conversation?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an exciting work. And I think what I'd really like to hone in on is to get a sense of how you've leveraged the relationships that you've built with high schools, with your secondary partners, to really take advantage of the courses that they teach as part of their career and technical education instructional suite, and how that's helped them either be prepared for the registered apprenticeship program or how it's integrated into the registered apprenticeship program.
All right, Raylyn, I'll take a crack at it and then please jump in. Raylyn's actually been at this longer than me. I joined the foundation, the National Foundation, in March. So I'm less familiar than she is with the high school program itself, but I'm managing the Restaurant Youth Registered Apprenticeship, which is in 4 states, including Delaware. And so I spend a bit more of my time focused on the apprenticeships, and I'm learning how are we best able to bridge the high school CTE to the apprenticeship. But just for a little bit of context, we have had the Pro Start program for a very long time and have been doing the CTE programming in the culinary and hospitality industry focused career pathway for many years prior to starting apprenticeship. We started apprenticeship for the first time in 2017. So we're just a few years into the apprenticeship piece of the work. And with the U.S. Department of Labor's Youth Apprenticeship Readiness Grant, we now have this opportunity to find the right formula for bridging from high school CTE into registered apprenticeship. So right now, we still have the 2 standalone programs per se, the Pro Start High School CTE, which takes a high school student through 2 years of training that prepares them with a combination of hands-on restaurant work and management level competencies. And they complete with a certificate of achievement, as well as a few industry recognized credentials, including the Serve Safe food handler certification or credential, which is needed across the industry. In our registered apprenticeships, the 2 career tracks we have are to become a line cook, which is really in the back of the house, in the kitchen, or to be a restaurant manager. And the line cook apprenticeship is a 1-year apprenticeship program, approximately. Everything is competency-based, but there's still a certain amount of hours expected that needs to be on the job, and with the related training instruction, it takes approximately a year to complete the line cook apprenticeship. With the restaurant manager, it takes approximately 2 years to complete that. So students in our high school Pro Start programs who are getting ready to graduate from high school and complete that have already acquired a lot of the competencies that are in our standards for registered apprenticeship. So there is strong alignment between the competencies the students get in the CTE programs and the competencies that are required of the registered apprenticeship. And there's also some alignment with the credentials. The high schoolers, the high school completers are coming away with that Serve Safe certification, which is also a requirement of the registered apprenticeship. So what we are doing is encouraging them, if they're interested in taking that next step to full-time employment as an apprentice, to know that they will get some advanced credit because they've already completed some of those competencies and credentials that someone just entering the registered apprenticeship would need to complete during the apprenticeship. The employer partner is really important in recognizing, though, that the student, the high school graduate, has acquired those competencies. So while we endorse them as a completer of the ProStart program, we still have the employer be the one who says, yes, they're demonstrating those competencies that are required at the registered apprenticeship level. I can see that they already know how to do certain things, and they're already coming to me with those certifications, and the employer signs off that they get that credit. In the case that a student would potentially start in registered apprenticeship, not being able to fully demonstrate. Certainly, we expect everyone coming out of our ProStart programs is going to go into that workplace and easily be able to demonstrate the competencies, but we engage the employer as a partner in validating that. So that doesn't answer your question about the high school partnerships per se. Ruth Ann is really just at the start of bringing the high school partners on board to operate essentially as pre-apprenticeship partners and start connecting those high school completers into the registered apprenticeship. So we may be a little bit early in our process to share a lot of lessons learned, but we're really excited that the partners are coming together and they're enthusiastic about making this connection.
Yeah, we're currently working with the ProStart programs. A Google Form survey was sent out in regards to what role an individual will play at that specific program, high school or site. So are they a case manager? Are they a supervisor, or are they a volunteer? And so that the educators can be a part of this database entering, the CTE directors can be a part of this, and if the principals wanted to be a part of it as well, guidance counselors. So we're in the stages of kind of onboarding our ProStart program partners into now this database that we're super excited to be kind of entering into this next step.
Raylan, I'm wondering if we could back up a little bit and talk about ProStart as a program, because it sounds to me like ProStart, is that the career and technical education coursework that's happening in the secondary space?
Correct. Culinary Arts and Hospitality Pathway. So we work very closely with CTE Director Luke Ryan at Department of Education, even more closely with Ginny Percucci, Education Associate of the Family and Consumer Sciences Pathway. And because of that relationship, they provide us ProStart program support funds in the beginning of the academic year to host professional developments, again, for both educators and students. And at the students, Jonathan, I saw you entered into the chat. We provide those job readiness, employability skills training. We invite in our employers to directly work and network with our students to kind of discuss how to properly interview, how to set up your resume, what credentials are they looking for, how to complete their job application. And then because of our work with both educators and students, providing those connectivity opportunities such as our Delaware ProStart Student Invitational. It's a combined culinary arts and restaurant management competition. Our first place teams get to travel to the National Restaurant Association's National ProStart Student Invitational and gets to network with all the other 49 states, Guam, Department of Defense bases. At our state level competition, they're competing for $2.5 million in scholarships. At nationals, I'm sure it's around the same amount. And so because of those opportunities, those connectivity events, they trust us. We're a part of their academia throughout the year. We host a big fundraising event where our students get to partner with local chefs and kind of push out hors d'oeuvres throughout the entire event. They get to raise funds to kind of take them to National ProStart Student Invitational. And so it's just like because of that work, the curriculum provided, we provide a hub for all of our educators to kind of share best practices, challenges within the program. We established that relationship. And so now entering into this new opportunity, we partnered with University of Delaware and Delaware Technical Community College to provide those dual enrollment courses of Intro to Hospitality or to their culinary arts degree. Now we're able to provide this dual opportunity into registered apprenticeship programs. So we're just really excited. I hope that answered your question.
Did, and I want to make sure I want folks know that you can either use the chat box or you can just come off mute and go ahead and share your question that way. I do want to point out a question out in the chat box about the wage progression in the career fields. Because wage progression is such an important part of the registered apprenticeship program, And it's a little bit of field from the question around CTE integration, but I think it gets to the question about if you're leveraging CTE courses, right, to build a student's competency, to make them more effective and efficient as a registered apprenticeship, how does that impact their wage progression going forward?
Mindy, do you want to talk about that wage data you just pulled for me for the one high school who asked that same exact question?
Yes, I was actually just trying to locate my file because we had some Delaware specific information, but I'll start with the general answer to this. The registered apprenticeship requires absolutely skill increases. So students who are coming out of high school and going into the workplace, we have a minimum requirement. They have to be paid the minimum wage in the state as a starting wage. And then we have exit wage expectation in each state in terms of how high that should go up. So it varies by state, but the aim is to get everybody up to, I believe it's between $14 and $15 an hour for a line cook. Now, the reality is someone who's working in line cook, the wage level is lower than a restaurant manager level. So it varies depending on the occupation they choose. And one thing that we pride ourselves on is that we have a whole career path that can take someone who's interested in this industry from, entry level, which line cook is one type of one occupation that's really at the entry level, up to being a supervisor, on to being a manager. And ultimately, we are seeking ways to help them advance up to the executive level. Someone who, reaches a restaurant management or executive chef or executive level, of course, can go much higher in terms of their annual salary. But the range that we looked at recently with some data, Department of Labor data in Delaware, was anywhere from about $12 an hour at the lowest range for the full rate. We looked at the full range of different occupations in the industry in Delaware, up to about $30 an hour at the highest levels of advancement in the field.
Okay, that's a really important piece of the puzzle. I'm wondering if you can, either one of you, speak, and Raylan, this might be a question more for you, speak a little bit about some of the challenges that you've maybe encountered. Like, are there secondary schools who've potentially struggled with some of how they get their CTE courses aligned? Have they had to do any kind of reshoring? You mentioned that there's professional development for teachers as part of the kind of broader ProStart program. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to how, either what some of the challenges have been and how you've worked to address them.
So, Andrea, just keep in mind that we are still at the beginning of this. So we haven't actually.
Absolutely.
So what I will say is what we're trying to be as proactive as we can be. So we're actually, for the 14 ProStart programs that have officially returned their ProStart program partnership agreements, and for the 2 that are kind of on the fence, the 16 of them, their educators, CTE directors, and principals will be attending this Welcome RIRA meeting. And it's going to lay out a quick snapshot into the overview, but most importantly, the expectations and the roles in which the educator plays and what's expected of the student. That will be hosted by both myself and Mindy, the DRAEF and NRAEF. And so we're going to do that. We have a Schoology Delaware ProStart Educators Hub where I currently post everything and everything of ProStart program. But within that, I'm going to create a RIRA folder so that anything RIRA related is absolutely accessible. Resources, documents, forms, the student waiver forms, the data waiver forms, all of that. We're going to be putting together a video of entering into this industry and make it very relatable about, you know, inviting in celebrities whose first job was in the industry and all the opportunities in this industry, especially educating the parents' point of view about their student entering into this industry. A lot of people just think you can either become a chef or you can be a restaurant manager, but that is not the case. And although those are our two career tracks, I will let you know a success story. Selfishly, I'd love to explain this, is we piloted the line cook apprenticeship program with Sodell Concepts. 2 out of our 5 apprentices was promoted to a sous chef within the first year of that line cook apprenticeship program. So it's a lattice in this industry. It's not just a ladder. So there are, Mindy briefly mentioned it, that the promotional opportunities are endless. So you can grow expeditiously. And so that's just something I definitely want to emphasize.
And I can tell you, I grew up in the restaurant industry. I put myself through college as a restaurant manager, so I will say the skills are terribly transferable. I'm wondering, there's a question in here from Kathleen Eddington, and this may be a little bit early days for you to be able to tell this, but the question around how you're getting employers and sponsors that are interested in hiring CTE students, that's often a real barrier. And I'm curious if you've had conversations with employers. Has that secondary alignment, the work that you've done to really align that curriculum, has that helped? Are employers accepting CTE curriculum towards related technical instruction?
Yes. That has been our biggest mission over the past 2.5 years on this work, is making sure that everything is aligned. Selfishly, we hope all of our students and our incumbent workers stay in the state of Delaware to work. But if they do decide to cross state lines, whatever the reason, that credentials received, certificate completions received are transferable. And so pushing and promoting the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation's programs and credentials just makes sense. And our employers are signing on because of the worker shortage in our industry right now. And unfortunately, that is tragic, and we're very concerned about the long-term effects it will have on our industry. And so these programs are almost a definite in retaining employees. So them signing on, it's you know, the benefit to them is that it's a definite program for at least a minimum of a year, up to 2 years. And within there, you know, they can get to know that employer and kind of just then work the ranks within that organization. So the NRAEF's 3 words are attract, retain, and empower. And so that's what we always try to strive for in regards to program development, credential development, so be it. And we like to play off of each other, a little friendly competition. So if Big Fish Restaurant Group signs on, you know, we secretly go tell Platinum Dining Group, hey, Big Fish Restaurant Group just signed on, just so you know. And so, like, you know, then that kind of just enters the door and be like, oh, they're doing it, why are we not doing it? And we crosswalk all employee programs. So, you know, we don't want to walk into an employer's organization and say, hey, we want to revamp your training. No, let us know what training you're already doing. Let us crosswalk it with the line cook track or the restaurant manager track, and let's see where we can meet in the middle so that it's not completely new to these employers where they're like, what else do I have to do? Because they're already, you know, dealing with a lot right now. So that's just another benefit. And that kind of eases their mind when we're doing that onboarding meeting with them.
That's great.
I wanted
before
to
I ask,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Just some of the conversations we had, not just in Delaware with employers, but other states that we're working in. I would say the thing that really motivates employers, you know, to gravitate towards the CTE graduates is that they have already demonstrated that they're really interested in this industry. They're not just looking for a job. And so the employers that are concerned about not just filling their vacancies, but longer term retention and you know, having people who have a passion for working with customers or working in the kitchen, they feel confident, and you know, we do too, that the students who've spent 2 years in a culinary training CTE program and hospitality are bringing that to their registered apprenticeship, rather than say a typical hire who's, you know, comes in for an interview based on a job ad. So I think that's a strong hook.
Yeah, and this is just such an incredibly important time for us to even rethink how restaurants hire and how folks find their way into the restaurant industry as a whole. I want to thank both of you for joining me in this conversation. It was so brief, and I think it tells me that maybe we need to have another time to have a longer conversation about this work. And I really appreciate the time that you spent just having a little conversation with us. As a reminder to folks, please, you can continue the discussion on our Youth Apprenticeship Works community of practice. This is a space for practitioners from around the country are coming together to talk about the work of building youth apprenticeship as part of the broader registered apprenticeship system. I think if we work on this all together, we can strengthen it to the benefit of students and employers. So thank you, Raylin, and thank you, Mindy, for taking the time. And thank you to everybody for joining us for this conversation, and we will talk soon. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone.
For inviting us. Have a great day.
Thank you.